Namaste. Welcome to the global gathering. And we have quite a current theme going on for this time's global gathering. And it's a time that we're living in where things are speeding up and getting pretty wild and tumultuous times. It doesn't matter whether you look in the political realm or in the climate change realm or in the refugee realm, or with all Brexit happening and immigration issues and the Middle East issues, it seems like no matter where we look right now, there's just a lot of world tumult going on. And then we begin to ask, well, how can I stay positive during all this craziness? And I was inspired by this because today I opened up my computer and I read that the big, huge heat wave that hit Europe, which was the hottest heat wave on record, was now moving up to the Arctic. And of course, we're knowing that the ice caps are melting there. And, it just seems, okay. Then I looked at the next thing and all these protesters protesting Brexit happening with Boris Johnson. And then I got onto the news that was happening in the United States and all that's going on with immigration there. And there was a big shooting going on in California and 12 people killed. And, it just went on and on. No matter where I turned, be it Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or just the news, it just seemed everywhere I look, there was chaos. And then I saw that on Facebook, actually a couple of friends of mine were posting on Facebook, and one was complaining about a particular political figure and what an embarrassment it was. And the other one responded that she said, is this helping? Blaming what's happening right now, is this contributing in any way? Having any positive impact? And so this kind of argument went back and forth, and it got quite vitriolic at one point. And I realized that there was a great deal of blame going around worldwide. And what I know from my own direct living experience is when there's a lot of blame going around, it's usually a cover-up for deeper things that we're feeling. Fear, or helplessness, or inability to change things. And so I wanted to really focus on how can we stay positive, and instead of blaming the politicians and blaming mankind for the climate change and blaming certain countries because of the refugees or the immigrants coming in, that maybe we take the blame out of the picture and we find out what's really going on deeper inside of us, because that's really a defense mechanism. Blaming the outside means we don't have to look inside at what's going on inside ourselves. And the journey, I don't know if you are familiar with it or not, was originally born from my own direct living experience from healing from a basketball-sized tumor. But one of the gifts of that healing was I found a means for all of us to go on a journey inside ourselves and get access to something that are called cell memories. And one of the things that science knows about our emotions and our body is that when we feel a strong emotion and we repress it, it releases a corresponding biochemistry into our bloodstream, which will go to certain cell receptors and block them, rendering those cells incapable of communicating with the rest of the cells in the body. And if over time illness happens, well, of course it happens where the cells are blocked. And conversely, what is also known to be true is that when we feel our emotions very naturally, very freely and openly, like a child does, our cell receptors remain open. And there are two aspects to the journey. One is getting access to these cell memories stored inside, but the other aspect is getting access to the infinite intelligence inside of you, to the part of you that makes your heart beat and your eyes shine and your hair grow, to this vast field of peace, this love that's inside all of you and inside me as well. It's an infinite field of presence, and it's from here that true answers, true guidance can come. And so if I had to describe in a nutshell what is the journey, the best way I could describe it to you is to say that all of us come into this world as this radiant, shining diamond, absolutely free, completely whole, as this vast field of enlightened awareness, of love, of peace. As a matter of fact, science says that when you're born and for the first few weeks of your life, an infant feels itself to be so vast and omnipresent that when mother's hand comes before the infant's eyes, the infant actually feels mother's hand as being part of itself. That's how one with all of life, we all of us came in as. But unfortunately, this infinite field of love, of peace, of joy, of freedom that pervades all of existence gets covered over with a series of lies and limitations and shutdowns. And it can be something very simple, like you're crying about something and you're 3 years old and your mother says, come on, let's dry our tears. We've got to get to nursery school. And the child gets it. Oh, I'm not allowed to feel, at least not those emotions that have the tears. And the first involuntary automatic shutdown happens. And then it can happen. I can remember I was 8 years old, and as many of you know who've read the book The Journey, that I came from a domestically challenged and very violent background. And the way I escaped that is I escaped into my children's books, and I got chosen. In the United States, we have this very stupid contest called the Spelling Bee. And I got chosen to represent the 8-year-olds for the Spelling Bee, which was happening for all the different grade schools in our county. And so we met in a stadium, and all the mothers and fathers were there, and the students and the teachers from all the different grade schools all around. So thousands of people were there. And I was on stage, and I had already spelled 3 difficult words. And then they gave me one of the easiest words on the English on the planet, the word fleet. But I'd never seen that word in any of my children's books. I had seen the word flea, an insect. And I stood there and I said, F-L-A-E-T? And the whole stadium was hushed. And then all at once, it erupted into laughter. Now, no one had given me a manual. How do you deal with mass humiliation in front of all your friends and all the parents of those friends and all the teachers and all the students? And I looked at my mother, who was sitting in the 3rd row, for help. And she just looked at me as if I was the greatest disappointment in her life. And she just shook her head and went, and it was like this internal wall just came slamming down. And I retreated behind that wall, and I went to go stand with the other contestants, the other losers at the back of the room. And that day I decided that I was so stupid, that I was so worthless, that people would only ever laugh at me. I'd never be good at anything. I just wasn't smart enough. And it's like this. We come in as this enlightened awareness, but it gets covered over with layers of lies, limitations, and shutdowns. I can remember that when I was around 16 years old, I fell in love with my first, I got a crush on a guy. And I tried to impress him. And of course, when you try to impress someone, I was trying to impress him, and I didn't know how to stop. And I watched the first love of my life running out of my life. And that day I decided I'm just so unlovable, I'm so unattractive, that I will never attract someone that I'm attracted to. I'm just not worthy of love. And it's like these layers stack up layer upon layer upon layer. And then when we get to be adults, we cover this whole mess over with this polished veneer, like this mask that we present to the world. And then we wonder why it is that everyone thinks we're so full of, you can finish that sentence. Well, then if you get to be very lucky, as I've been more lucky than I could possibly thank life for, or the infinite for, life gives you a wake-up call. And these wake-up calls can come in so many different forms. They can come in the form of reading the newspaper today and seeing all the wildness going on, or a loss of a loved one, or acrimonious divorce that you're going through, or feeling like, Britain's, financial situation might collapse because of Brexit. And it's where for just a moment you crack through this hardened veneer, this polished mask that you're presenting to the world. And spontaneously, you begin opening down through the layers of the lies and the shutdowns and the hurt and the pain. And eventually you end up opening into this vast field of love, of peace, that is your own essence, that is your own soul. And you realize it's been there all along, but like me, you identified with all the layers that covered it. And if you're as blessed as I am, you find you fall so in love with the truth of who you are, with your real authentic essence, that like me, you will do anything to clear whatever blocks you, whatever holds you back, whatever shuts you down, so that this radiant potential that is your own essence, this love, this truth, can live your life, that you can live authentically expressed from this. So when all the craziness is going on around you, you can open into this that is a peace that underlies all the craziness that's on the surface. And so I really feel that during these times, today when I opened the Facebook and saw that argument happening between, two dear friends of mine, and she said, how are you adding to creating positivity here by all this blame? And I realized that one of my friends had gotten scared. And when we get scared, we project outside ourselves. And what the other friend was trying to do is to point her back to the truth inside of herself. And so I wanted to kind of make an invitation to you here that the journey is designed to take you on a journey inside yourself, to get access not only to your soul, but at that deepest level, to turn the torch on inside, the flashlight on inside, and to go on a journey inside your body and get access to these old repressed cell memories, this old pain, this hurt, this blame, this shame, the helplessness, the fear. And at that deepest level, to go through a radical process of release and letting go and ultimate understanding what's happened to you in your life and forgiveness, so that when new cells are born, they're born devoid of that old consciousness. And I found that as I cleared in myself more and more layers, that more and more of this love that I am is exposing itself and revealing itself. And so when the tumult comes from outside and I'm reading all the craziness that's going on, I'm able to open into this depth of peace that is my own self, and I can feel guided by that. I can listen to that, and I can take clear action that's not born from fear, but rather it's born from truth. And that's the only action that will feel right to you, where you will feel at home in your own skin. That you'll be taking positive action during these wild times that we're taking. So I wanted to invite you, I'd like to take you into a little meditation right now. And the truth of the matter is all of us have these emotions stored inside our bodies. And they get locked down inside of us. They get stored inside of our body. And we've had a tendency in our life to, anytime a strong emotion comes up, that we're not comfortable with it. What happens is, well, we smoke it away, or we drink it away, or we get on Facebook, or get on Netflix, call a friend, go to the movies, or get constantly in motion. And we're in a constant game of avoiding what's inside of us. And so in the journey, we learn instead to befriend our own souls and to befriend our bodies and to willingly open into and uncover what we've been stuffing and really repressing inside of ourselves. And then we go through a very powerful process of release and letting go and forgiveness, so the body can come to a place of peace and you can feel at home in your own skin. So even though I cannot take you through an entire journey process right now, we have a journey online program, which is, I think, a 6 weeks program where you can really roll up your sleeves and dive in and learn how to undergo this work of inside your body, and to really, in a very direct way, meet the real issues that have been holding you back in life and preventing you from living fully expressed as your real self. So even though I cannot take you through all the different beautiful and liberating processes that we have available to you, I still would love to take you into a guided meditation where you can begin to uncover that, in fact, you do have emotional issues stored inside of you. And what happens in life, we have these issues, they're stored inside of our cells. As a matter of fact, if you get on the CDC, the Center for Disease Control's website, what it will say is that 85% of all illness has an emotional basis. And the reason they're able to say that is that because of all the work going on in the field of cellular healing and the knowledge of how it is that when we feel these strong emotions and we repress them, it releases that biochemistry. And so one of the things that happens in life, and life is able to trigger us, is these issues are already stored inside of our bodies. And what happens is we hear the news, we read Facebook, we get on Twitter, Instagram, Netflix, not Netflix, but any of the news articles that we're reading, and we get triggered. Now, those external things, they did not create the pain inside of you. So for instance, let's say you're driving your car and someone cuts you off and up comes this rage. Well, that person did not come in the middle of the night and stick the rage there. That rage was already there, and all that happened is they pushed your button and up came the rage that's already stored there. And this is what's happening. We read about the polar ice caps. We see them melting. We read about the man who opened fire at that festival, at the garlic festival in California. And boom, it pushes our buttons, and then the helplessness, the fear, the anger that's already stored inside of our bodies, it comes up. And then it so upsets us that we find ourselves blaming all of life. And I feel that we just get into a loop. And all that blame is an avoidance of meeting the pain that's stored inside of us. So I wonder if you'd be willing to try a divine experiment. And instead of consulting your mind, maybe we befriend our bodies a bit. And we let our bodies reveal to us what is stored here. What emotions are here? What words are here? And so, even though this isn't a journey process by any means, it may help you begin to recognize that these emotions are there stored at an impulse level. And all that's really happening in life is the external circumstances aren't creating the emotion. They're just pushing your buttons, and up is coming the emotion. So, if you'd like to join me, let's take a nice deep breath in and close your eyes and taking another nice deep breath in and just blowing any stress out of the room. So on the next deep breath in, just blowing any stress out of the room. And just with the next deep breath in, feeling that your body is being given permission just to soften and relax. That your mind is being given permission just to soften and open and relax. That your being is given permission just to open and relax. And we're just going to do this divine experiment where we'll just take a few moments to go inside. And let's begin by first softening and opening our bodies. And so smoothing your own forehead and softening the corners of the eyes. And relaxing the facial muscles and releasing the grip of the jaw. All of us carry so much tension, and the tension doesn't protect us from anything. All that tension can give you is more tension. So you might as well just decide to release the tension now. And feeling your own throat beginning to soften and relax. And just let it become limp like spaghetti noodles. Muscles are allowed to soften, and even your own shoulders, as if you're just releasing any burden of responsibility you might be carrying. All of us seem to carry so much responsibility these days, and just asking that some force of life come lift that off your shoulders. And what if your own responsibility right now is just to relax, just to open your heart, your mind, your being, and softening your chest. And opening the door to the heart, as if you're saying, I am open to life. And just breathing life in. And releasing what's here to be released. Breathing life in. And just letting go. Softening the solar plexus region, And the belly, you can let your own belly just go flop. And softening the back side and the sides of the hips, and just relaxing and opening the pelvic region, as if you're giving your body permission just to relax deeply now. And softening the upper thighs and the middle of the thighs, knees, legs, and feet. And sometimes it's like we're carrying so much armor, we're bracing against life. Or I described to you how this big internal wall just came slamming down at that spelling bee. And so we've kind of reacted to life by bracing against it and erecting walls against it. And if you've been doing that, don't just imagine there's an external wall here that's crumbling into so much gravel, turning into dust and being swept out of the room. And for most of us, our bodies is the armor. And so opening the front door of any armor that might be here, and the back door, and the side doors, and take any masks off, and letting the whole suit of pseudo armor drop now to the ground and be swept out of the room. And you're just left as open exposure to your own self. And the self is realized to be infinitely vast, spacious, free and endless in front of you. Boundlessly spacious and vast behind you. It's infinitely spacious and vast to all sides of you. Boundless below, and sky-like above. Just resting here, as an ocean of ever deepening stillness. And letting your heart be as wide as the world. Wide enough to include not just the emotions that live inside of you, but even your ancestors' emotions. That's how vast this love is, that is yourself. And now taking your gaze and going inside the body. And you already know this, but the body's like this container full of all kinds of emotions. And our feelings, they're like little kids, Some are loud and attention-seeking, always trying to get your attention. And others of our emotions, they're shy and scared of us. In others of our feelings, we've rejected them so many times that, like a little child, they don't even come up anymore. They don't even trust us anymore. And they hide underneath lids and behind closed doors. And just putting out a heartfelt welcome right now to all the feelings that live inside of you. And you might even say you're sorry for having pushed them away so many times. And now locating a part of your body where you may feel a little tension or stress or holding or contraction or hiding going on. Just locate that area where it just may feel like it's held in some way or contracted in some way. And taking a deep breath in of acceptance right now. And now flooding that area with acceptance. Letting it soften and open and be tenderized and marinated. And as it softens and opens, just asking if there were a feeling beginning to rise out of that area right now. What might that feeling be? Or if this feeling that's there, this area could speak and had words, and you gave it a voice, what would this area say right now? And as you hear the words, how do they make you feel emotionally? And staying open with that part of the body, and sometimes a picture will come up. Well, if a picture does come up, step into it. How are you feeling in that picture? Just welcoming whatever's here and whatever's not here. It might be as quiet as a whisper. So just staying open with this part of the body. Perhaps there's even a lid that you've put over something here in this part of the body, a shutdown. And if there is a lid there, just locate that lid. And like peeling the can of a can of peanuts, you know how you peel the lid back? Well, as if you're peeling the lid of a can of peanuts back, just take hold of this lid right now and lift it off. What's hiding here? And if there were a feeling connected to what's hiding here, how are you feeling? Just welcoming whatever's here and whatever's not here. Take a nice deep breath in. And flooding it again with acceptance. And now coming to neutral inside yourself. And locating another area where there may be a little bit of tension or stress or holding or hiding or contraction going on. Just locate that area now. And again, take a deep breath in of acceptance. And now flooding that area with acceptance, letting it soften and open and be marinated and tenderized. And as you softly open with that area, I wonder what's beginning to come up for you emotionally right now. Might be quiet as a whisper. But if there were a feeling there, what might that feeling be? Or if this area could speak and had words, what would it say? Give it a voice. Sometimes sounds need to come up, or words need to come out. And if there were words that want to be spoken, what might those words be right now? And as you hear the words arise in your awareness, how do they make you feel emotionally? Might be as quiet as a whisper, so just stay open. Or if there is a picture, step into it. Or maybe you feel that you've numbed out in this area of your body, that somehow there is this lid. Well, take hold of it and lift it off. What's hiding here? And as you open with what's hiding here, how does it make you feel emotionally? Just welcoming whatever's here and whatever's not here. And taking a deep breath in of acceptance. Flooding this area with your own acceptance. Letting it soften and open and coming to neutral inside. And then finally, finding another area where there may be a little tension or stress or holding or hiding or contraction going on. Locate that area. And take a deep breath in of acceptance. And now flood that area with acceptance, letting it soften, open, be marinated and tenderized. And just as you open with that area, if there were a feeling starting to come up, maybe as quiet as a whisper, you really have to be present. But if there were a feeling, what might it be? I've got a feeling of helplessness arising here. I don't know what you've got. So just welcoming whatever's here and also whatever's not here. Or perhaps it looks like there's a door somewhere that you've locked this emotion away behind. Well, go ahead and open that door. What's hiding there? Or if there is that lid of numbness, take hold of it and lift it off. What's hiding here? Just welcoming whatever's here and whatever's not here. And now putting out a welcome out to your body that for once you're going to be present to yourself. You're going to listen to yourself. You're going to open with what's here inside of you. And really listen to what your body has to say. And just putting out that promise that you're going to take time with yourself. Taking a nice deep breath in. Letting it out. And another nice deep breath in. And sighing it out. And the awareness remains spacious, vast, free and endless in front of you. Boundlessly vast, spacious behind. And free and endless to all sides of you. Boundless below. Sky-like above. And just resting here. In this ocean. As this ocean. So that eyes open or eyes closed. Same. Taking another nice deep breath in. And letting it out. And another nice deep breath in. And sighing it out. And one more nice deep breath in. Sighing it out. And when the eyes are ready, you can open them now into this ocean of pure awareness, of stillness, of love. Now I trust that you probably found, even if it was as quiet as a whisper, that there are emotions stored inside of you. They may be very delicate, some might be quite strong. But what I love about the Journey method is what it does is when you've uncovered a big emotion like that, if you have the courage to open with an emotion and just really welcome it, just allow it to bloom even fuller, you'll find that you'll open into an even deeper emotion, and that all of us have layers of emotions. And if you allow this deeper emotion just to be here, just allow it to be felt, you will feel yourself automatically opening into an even deeper feeling. And you may even pass through at some point in a field of nothingness. And if you continue just to relax and open, you will eventually open into this that I call Source, into this vast, boundless field of love, of peace, of joy, of freedom that is your own essence. And with the Journey, it's at that deepest level, at the level of the soul, at the level of your own truth, that we turn the torch on, the flashlight on inside. And you go on a journey inside your body where you're going to go to specific cellular locations where these old issues are stored and go through a very powerful, gentle, but extraordinarily liberating process of releasing what's stored there, letting go what's there, coming to an understanding of what's happened to you in your life. And ultimately, forgiveness, which is when you let go of your whole story of pain, so that when new cells are born, they're born devoid of that old consciousness as new regenerative cells. And so I feel that during these tumultuous times, that it's a huge invitation that we take time to be with ourselves, to open into the truth, the love, the freedom, the joy that is your own essence, and to clear whatever's blocking you, whatever's holding you back, whatever shutdowns are here, whatever limitations are here, so that when we get these crazy mixed up news from external, we're not triggered. We're instead able to offer conscious, clear, positive action in our own life. And so instead of being tossed around like in a washing machine, being buffeted from all directions by what's going on in our world, you have this ability to open into the peace inside yourself. And it's only from there that true answers are available. So I